Hello and welcome back to Kidocracy at Large. I'm Siddhan Chandra, here every Saturday to present current events and collective conditions in the framework of kidocracy, which is a call for the rule of minors and minorities. Kidocratic education, led by minors and minorities, aimed at adults and the majority, is happening as we speak. Last week, on Canada's National Day of Indigenous People, 2 churches were burned on the First Nation reserves in Osoyoos and Penticton, soon after the discovery of the remains of 215 children on the site of a former residential school in Kamloops. The residential schools were run by the Catholic Church, supported by the Canadian colonial state, for over a century, separating 150,000 Indigenous children from their families as an assimilation program. Forced to convert to Christianity and banned from their languages and culture, the children were subjected to forced labor and emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. About 6,000 of them died. And the day after the National Indigenous Peoples Day, 751 unmarked graves were found on the site of another residential school in Saskatchewan. Chief Cadmus Delorme said, "The Pope needs to apologize as the first step towards healing the Indigenous communities from their generational trauma, ongoing racism, and denial of their suffering." A papal apology was one of the 94 recommendations made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was part of a governmental apology and settlement over the schools. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, a Catholic, has been asking for a papal apology since 2017 and renewed it recently again. The Pope has not apologized. And the missionary oblates of Mary Immaculate, who ran over half of these schools, including the one at Kamloops, still refuses to release the records to help identify the victims. A report of this in the Irish Post notes the chilling parallel to Ireland's own Catholic industrial schools and mother and baby homes, where the bodies of hundreds of children and babies were found in unmarked graves. The most notorious saw the remains of up to 800 children found buried in a septic tank on the grounds of a former mother and baby home in Tuam, County Galway. But a report released earlier this year indicates that up to 9,000 babies died in just 18 homes investigated across Ireland. In Latin America, Indigenous people, as well as women and children in general, continue to be persecuted, showing the global reach of Catholic crimes. For example, in Brazil, Indigenous people's lands are being devastated by illegal mining and agricultural development, with the full support of the Bolsonaro government. Last week, those protesting in Brasilia against new legislation that will undermine the rights of Indigenous people and their territories were tear-gassed and shot with rubber bullets. Those injured included women, children, and the elderly. Though Pope Francis apologized for the sins of the Catholic Church against the Indigenous people in the name of God, he has not done much to improve the status of women in the church, nor has he loosened the celibacy requirement of the strictly male clergy. I look at the status of women in Latin America, where even children raped and impregnated are not allowed abortion, and those who help them are jailed, shows that the Catholic Church continues to fail women and children. In the US, the bishops are showing themselves to be holier than the Pope by denying President Joe Biden communion because of his support for abortion. And in Texas, they have already banned abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. 2 years ago, in a Guardian piece called "The Catholic Church is Still Making Excuses for Pedophilia," Peter Stanford noted his disappointment with the Pope over his inaction on sexual abuse within the church. Open quote, "The problem of abuse will continue," Pope Francis told reporters, "as if it were as inevitable as the sunrise. It is a human problem." Unquote. In 2018, Pope Francis blamed the devil. He said, "The church must be saved from the attacks of the malign one, the great accuser," and recommended everyone to pray the rosary every day of the month of October to repel the attacks of the devil who wants to divide the church. All he can think of is the church. Whether the Pope grows and develops under the current demand for a papal apology for what the church did in Canada remains to be seen. But whether he does or not, it is clear that the stranglehold of the Catholic Church on humanity needs to be broken. A recent documentary called "Holy Silence" by Stephen Pressman shows the complicity of Pope Pius XII in the slaughter of the Jews during the Second World War. Fixated against communism, he spurned all pleas to publicly condemn the genocide of the Jews. When the Nazis occupied Italy and started rounding up the Jews, he said nothing, did nothing. When in October 1943, 1,259 Jews were arrested and imprisoned close to Vatican City before being sent to Auschwitz, he said nothing, did nothing. All that he wanted from the Allied forces was that Rome, within which the Vatican is located, not be bombed. Yet, Pope Benedict, the predecessor of the current Pope, Joseph Ratzinger, also known as Ratzi, tried to canonize Pope Pius, despite his deplorable record. Pope Pius XII reigned between 1939 to 1958 and consolidated the wealth of the Vatican, continuing a process that had begun centuries ago, since 313 AD, when Catholicism became the official religion of the Roman Empire. According to a piece in the National Post called "The Wealth of Roman Catholic Church Impossible to Calculate," the church acquired land surrounding Rome, converting pagan temples and claiming relics for itself. For the next 1,000 years, tributes flowed from all over Europe. Non-Christians and even fellow Christians were killed and their property confiscated. For example, the Fourth Crusade and the sack of Constantinople in the early 13th century brought it gold, money, and jewels. And this is in the National Post, a conservative paper, though the Vatican released information last year that its wealth equaled 4 billion euros. The list compiled by the National Post article belies that claim. $10 billion reported investment in foreign companies by the Institute of Religious Works, the Vatican Bank, in 1990s, with holdings in banking, insurance, chemicals, steel, construction, and real estate. The amount of church-owned land in square kilometers is 716,290 across the globe including Vatican embassies, churches, cathedrals, monasteries, schools, and convents. The long list includes $2 billion paid out as settlements by the church for sex abuse allegations in the United States alone. Pope Francis might be better than Ratzinger, but it is clear that this institution, this noxious institution that failed the Jewish people and continues to fail the indigenous people, women and children of this planet, needs to be dismantled. How? Through kidocratic anti-fascist education led by minors and minorities, through promoting an affiliation with the weaker entities of this story, instead of a majoritarian justification of a mafiosi who have humanity in their stranglehold. Last week in Nova Scotia, Canada, for the first time ever, Elmer Lewis, a survivor from the Eskasoni First Nation in Cape Breton, led a freedom march on National Indigenous Peoples Day, walking away from the Shubenacadie Residential School that operated between 1929 and 1967. Elmer Lewis remembered that some children did not get to go home between the school years at all, including himself. Let us walk with Elmer Lewis in solidarity with all those children as another step towards indigenizing this planet and setting right an imbalance that has gone on for too long. The Christian Church, with its acquisitive model, laid the groundwork for colonialism and capitalism, all of which are still continuing to ravage this globe in the middle of a climate emergency, heightened by a pandemic. It is true that Christianity's anti-science, anti-pleasure, and anti-nature propaganda is still at work, which means that we have this to look forward to: an anti-fascist education that is pro-science, pro-pleasure, and pro-nature, led by minors and minorities, led by indigenous people, women, children, and other minorities, through movements such as BLM, Idle No More, and Fridays for Future, and Occupy. Kidocratic education aims to integrate the 99%, a numerical majority, but in power a minority, so that we can rule and regulate the planet's richest 1%, which includes the Pope. Let us demand not only an apology from the Pope, but also a reparation to heal the survivors of the crimes of the Church. There is plenty of Vatican wealth to accomplish that. Till next week, bye.